Hello and welcome to this session today. I'm George, I'm a project consultant here at Grad Consult, and in this session, in this recording, I'm going to be talking about developing your commercial awareness. Hopefully from this session, you can take away the following. So we firstly want you to understand commercial awareness and why it's important. We don't not only want you to understand it, but we want to showcase how you can demonstrate it in future job applications. We're then going to talk about briefly SWOT and pest analysis to demonstrate your commercial awareness. You may be familiar with SWOT, maybe less familiar with pest, but I'll cover that. And then we're going to talk about, in a few slides' time, a few example business cases for you to really understand commercial awareness and for you to really improve your commercial awareness. So firstly, what is it? What is commercial awareness? And we've got a clear definition here on this slide, and it breaks down into three components. So the first one is knowledge of how the business makes money. So it's the first aspect of commercial awareness. Secondly, it's about what customers actually want from your business and from the sector. And lastly, you've got what problems there are in particular areas of businesses. So why are we talking about commercial awareness? This study here tells us exactly why. So this was a report conducted in 2019, and it talks about the proportion of employers who say entry-level hires lack these skills. And as you can see, commercial awareness is fourth on that list. So it's definitely something that employers say is important, and there seems to be a gap there. So this session is designed to help improve your commercial awareness. So going back to the definition and just a way to visualize the three aspects of commercial awareness. So you'd firstly start off with how the business makes money, what the customer wants, and then what challenges face the industry. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to go through a few examples about each aspect of commercial awareness, just to illustrate the point and just for you to further understand commercial awareness. So first up, we're going to be talking about how a certain business, in this case it's a fictional business, of course, ABC Advertising Limited, it's a fictional business, and we'll talk about how this business would make money in the advertising sector. So firstly, a business in advertising would make money by creating tailored marketing campaign for external clients. So a client would approach a business, or an individual would approach the marketing agency and want to understand how they can better sell their product. And then the advertising company would create a campaign that is tailored to that business or to that individual to promote their product. Not only can they do that for external clients, but they can actually do it for themselves. They can either be just an advertising agency that simply wants to promote their services in terms of marketing, or they could be someone that actually has a marketing team in-house of this organization, of this wider organization, and wants to improve the marketing of their own products. So it can be done externally, and it can be done internally with an in-house team, an in-house advertising team or a marketing team. And lastly, another way that they would make money is pay-per-click advertising. And this basically just means driving traffic to a website in which an advertiser would pay the publisher of the link when the ad is clicked. So this might be something that you're familiar with, and it's sometimes when you go onto Google and you type in a certain company and it comes up with different adverts at the top, Google would be paid because they've advertised that company on their platform. If you click that link, then Google will get a slice in terms of advertising commission. So that's just how an advertising agency would be able to make money. Next up, we're going to think about in terms of what the customer wants. An example that we've got here is a media company. And again, it's a fictional company called My Media Limited. First up, one of the things that is definitely a hot topic right now, and it's definitely at the forefront of people's minds, is on-demand content. There will be different desires, and of course, a few years ago, it wasn't so much, maybe 10 years ago and prior, there wasn't so much need for on-demand content. But right now, with the amount of content that's out there, people want their content right now. They want to be able to access it immediately. They don't necessarily want to have to wait. Simply, it can even be when you watch a show and you've got to wait a week to do that. Again, in terms of how boxes are released now, there's an increased desire to watch to be able to access their shows whenever they want to. So rather than having to wait, there's lots of box sets out there that are released immediately on many platforms. You're going to watch the whole series, and that is on-demand content as well. Same with film. We're starting to see film actually being released on platforms immediately for people to watch at home rather than having to go to the cinema. And it's about having that content immediately, but also being able to access it whenever they want as well. So it's stored, they can reach out to it, they can have a look at it whenever they please. So that's important in today's times. You then got high quality visuals, and this comes from the improvement of technology. So we're starting to see better screens. So we had HD initially was a big breakthrough, and now we're starting to see Ultra HD or 4K. So we're starting to see lots of improvements in the visuals in terms of the screens, in terms of the platforms that we're actually viewing this content on. And that's only going to increase, not only visuals, but even the sounds and things like that. All of these things are only going to improve, and that's exactly what customers want. That's what they demand. That's what they expect. Next up, it's to actually be aware of what are the motivations for the clients. What is it they actually want to do? Why are they here? Why are they consuming the content? And a lot of the time, it could just be they just want entertainment. That's that. That's maybe the majority of the time, and the majority of the reason that people are viewing content. But also, there's a market for educational content and sometimes escapism. So similar to entertainment, but it's more about being enthralled in the story and being kind of taken away from reality, and it's just something for them to enjoy, just from give a little bit of a break when they're resting. So different motivations, and that requires different forms of content as well to reach those markets. So that's just something that a media company would have to be aware of. Next up, we're actually talking about a sector, because this aspect of commercial awareness is about what challenges face the industry. So we're focusing on the law sector here. So first up, we've got high volume work. So this is the admin heavy work that is actually being replaced by tech and AI. So technology and AI are going to be covering those forms of work. So it's things like contract analysis and due diligence and things like that. The admin heavy stuff that tech is now able to do with increased accuracy as well. And they can do it at scale. And this first point then leads on to the next point, which is issues of talent pipelines and career progression. Those things that we mentioned in point 1 are normally covered by entry-level candidates and graduates. So that's how they get familiar with the sector. They do the admin side so they can gain a bit of familiarity and improve their understanding of the sector. But if that's being replaced by technology and AI, what does that mean in terms of career progression? What is the starting point for graduates and for entry-level candidates? So that's something that the law sector needs to be aware of. And the last one, and this could really relate to any sector. All of these 3 points could relate to any sector, but in particular this one here, which is changing regulations and political uncertainty. Now, these are things that are always going to be present. The last point is always going to be present. There's always going to be changes in regulations, and there's always going to be changes in our politics as well. So it's important that each sector, especially the law sector, as we're talking about here, is aware, is up to date with the changing regulations and the political scene, how it's looking, so that they can adapt and still perform their best in an environment that is ever changing. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of background, I understand, of commercial awareness. Now we're actually going to talk about how you can demonstrate your commercial awareness and use it to your advantage. So what we'd like you to do is actually think of commercial awareness as professional curiosity. That's all it is. You're trying to learn about something in a professional manner, and that relates to other people, that relate to organizations and the sectors that you're interested in. In terms of showing your curiosity and showing your research when you're preparing your applications, an easy thing to do is just look at a website, because of course that's the easiest to access and there's going to be lots of information on there as well. However, that's where a lot of people normally stop. They look at a website and that's that. There's actually an abundance of information, a better information as well, more relevant information that you can find from articles, and that could even be on industry websites, that can be on social media like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great platform, and companies are ever more encouraged to post on there because there's a lot of engagement that comes from people that visit LinkedIn. So you can learn a lot more about an organization beyond the marketing that you see normally on the website. So definitely have a look at articles if you can. Definitely check out LinkedIn so you can learn more about the company. That's not to say that you should dismiss the website and never look at the website. The website is a great place to start to build a foundational knowledge of the company, especially if it's a company that you've never heard of. Then having a look at the website just helps to build that familiarity. Now, these organizations, they're not expecting you to know everything, but it really isn't hard to just do a bit more digging than simply looking at the website. They definitely want more than that because they know that's standard practice. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So there's definitely a desire for companies to see more commercial awareness than just looking at the website. And it can definitely be done. And really, all it takes is just a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. Hopefully, you're already motivated to research a company because you're intrigued by the company. It's a sector you want to work in, or it's a company you want to work in, and you've heard about them, you're familiar with them, and you'd love a job there. So you're motivated to do a bit more research and a bit more things, find out a bit more things that may help you stand out in your application. However, there would still be companies out there that you might be less familiar with and that would require more research. And I would implore you to definitely still do that research because you might find a few things that surprise you, that do intrigue you and do make you think, actually, this is an organization I could work for, or this is a sector that could interest me. In terms of how you can actually do the research, you've got one tool here which I think that most people would be familiar with, and that is the SWOT analysis. This is something that we probably had throughout our education, so we are familiar with it, but you might not realize how you can actually use this in terms of commercial awareness. So if you just follow these steps when you're researching the company, you'll be able to understand a lot about that organization, and you'll be able to showcase that in your interviews and in the application process as well. So it's definitely a good place to start. And what I would say, especially with the opportunities and threats, and maybe even the weaknesses as well, most companies would be aware of all their strengths, so that's fair enough. But if you can demonstrate you understand the opportunities that the businesses has, the threats they face, and the weaknesses that they have, at the least, it will show that you're on the same page as the business. However, let's just say you find something that they're not aware of, or maybe they're aware of it, but they don't know how to tackle it, and you find a solution to that. You can demonstrate that in the application process. That will definitely make you stand out. Let's not say, well, that's what they expect, but that's just to say that could happen. And if you follow SWOT, at the least, you're going to find out that you're on the same page as the company. You know a good amount about the company, and the company is still going to be impressed by that. So give yourself a chance to see what you can find out and then demonstrate that in the recruitment process. Next up is just a few prompts for you to consider. You've got those tools there. You've got the SWOT analysis for you to think about, but you can also ask yourself these sorts of questions and these sorts of prompts. So it could be, what are the challenges that face the industry? Of course, we've covered that in commercial awareness already, but definitely keep that on the forefront of your mind. How is it they sell themselves? So this comes back to marketing. Of course, every company would have marketing, and they would have a marketing department and how they showcase their products, showcase their services. But what is their unique selling point? What makes them different? Going to talk about products and projects and clients as well. So this is something that they're normally going to want to talk about, especially if it's a new product. They'll definitely advertise that on their website. But understanding what the company does and what is at the core of the company will really help you to understand what they're all about and demonstrate your understanding of the business in the recruitment process. And of course, if you're keeping up to date what they're doing, what they're doing recently and what's new about them, then that is also going to put you in good stead as well. Talking about specific tasks in the job description as well, that is a key point there because that is what you're going to be doing day to day. So being aware of those things in your job application and demonstrating that you have the skills, you have the experiences that relate to that is definitely going to help you out. And even if it's things that you're not too sure about, you're thinking, oh, I've not done that before, I don't know how I could gain that, then have an attitude, have a growth mindset towards it and think, actually, that is something I want to learn more about, and bring those questions to the interview to get that far. It's always good to hear that a candidate is looking to learn, is willing to take on these opportunities, willing to take on these challenges as well. So anything you're not sure about in the job description in terms of that you're maybe willing to learn, or you want a few more details about it, and you want to give it a go, if that makes sense in terms of demonstrating an enthusiasm to challenge yourself, definitely save that for questions in the interview if you get to that stage. And that then links to showing you understand the challenges of the role. There could be certain things that you're just not familiar with just yet, but if you can demonstrate a desire to want to learn about those things, that is going to help. And also in terms of wider challenges, so if you're aware of the challenges that actually face the industry, then you know what sort of challenges you're going to find day to day in your role. That just shows you the importance of doing your research and being as informed as possible when you're applying to a job. The last point is something that might not relate to each individual circumstances, but it is still important nonetheless. And it's about knowing the site that you're going to be working at. So, for example, you'll have a big organization, if we think about a car company as well. So think about a motor company, and they'll have lots of different sites around the country, and sometimes they have them in different countries as well. And they might do something unique at each site. So if you're going to be working at the London site, you need to make sure you know what they do at the London site. Whereas it could be actually the Manchester site is that something that does something else, and you're talking about the things that you'd be doing at the Manchester site, although you're applying to the London site. And that could even be for other countries as well. It could be that they have a site in France or Germany or somewhere like that, and they do certain things there that you're not going to be doing if you worked in the UK. But if you talk about those things that aren't relevant to the site you're working at, it just shows you don't know what's in store. You don't know what to expect. So make sure you do your research. Make sure your research is specific to the place you're going to be working at as well. Now, I said about the second tool that we'd be covering, which is the pest analysis. And again, this can help in terms of thinking about the previous factors as well that we've discussed. So it might be something you're less familiar with. And the difference between pest and SWOT is that pest is all about the external factors. So just to give you an example, we spoke about political factors and technological factors when we spoke about the law sector. So being mindful of those things will really help in your job applications. You can either use both, and you can use those prompts in terms of how to demonstrate your research that we covered on the previous slides, but definitely use those tools so you can really develop your commercial awareness. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some tips to utilize commercial awareness in the recruitment process. So the first thing for you to consider, and we've mentioned this a few times already now, and that is looking beyond the marketing. So being aware of the marketing agenda and what it's trying to do, how it's trying to attract you. So here we've got, this is an actual job. This image here is an actual advert. So it's an actual way to attract candidates to apply for this role. Now, my impressions, I would look at that and say, okay, it looks like some sort of road trip, and there's some lovely weather in the background, and like a cliff edge there as well. So it could be advertising like a travel agency, maybe about certain experiences in different countries. Could be America, could be California. So that's the sort of impression that I would get from looking at this advert. You could have a completely different impression of this advert. So it's important to bear in mind what your impressions are, and then what actually is the reality. So the reality is this advert is actually to work for E.ON, which is the energy company. Of course, you may have been able to deduce that by the wind turbines in the background, but they're in the background. They're not even in the main part of the image. So it just shows you how advertising can be one way, and it's all about attracting you. But it doesn't actually give you the details that you need to know, because this is the site that you'd be working at if you was to work for E.ON's grad scheme, or this role that it's advertising for. This is not to criticize E.ON or to say that it's not a place that you'd want to work at every day, but it's important to go in with an open mind and with open eyes to see actually what you're getting into and if that's right for you. So companies will put out the marketing material, and they'll know that a few people, the main aim is to attract people, but what they don't want is for people just to believe it all completely. They do want you to have a bit of an understanding that, okay, yes, you're attracted by it, but you do know way more about it. You know where you're going to be working, you know what's involved. So just be mindful of the marketing material and how much impression that gives you of the company. The next tip is to actually look beyond the sector that you're interested in. So, for example, here, this image is from Severn Trent, and it's a water sewage company. Now, you might think, if you're someone who wants to work in finance, if you're someone that wants to work in IT, you might think, why would I want to work for a water sewage company? However, Severn Trent still need people to work in IT. They still need people to work in finance. You don't necessarily have to work in the finance sector, in a finance company to do finance. And that goes the same with IT. Basically, all companies now need someone who's good at IT, who knows their stuff with IT, and who knows finance. You could really apply those skills that you've gained from your degree or those experiences that you've gained into any company. There's always a need for that. Same with marketing as well. You might think, well, I like marketing. I don't want to work for a water sewage company, but Severn Trent still needs someone to market their services. So it just goes to show you, don't think I want to work in finance, I need to work for a finance company, or I work in IT, so I need to work for an IT company. And the same goes with marketing as well. So don't get hung up on looking for jobs that are for companies in your field of interest, like finance, for example. So just bear that in mind. The next tip is to look beyond the big brand. So of course, everybody is familiar with Apple here. The point here is to say that a big brand doesn't necessarily mean they're a big employer. And we'll talk about that in the next few slides, because Apple don't have a large employer base in the UK, and they won't be hiring that many graduates in the UK either. There are lots of other big companies that are less well known that you can consider to apply to. And this point is illustrated here. So you may not have heard of Yazaki, or you may have, but you're more likely to have heard of Jaguar Land Rover. So this is about big brand versus big employer. So Jaguar Land Rover worldwide have 50,000 employees. That is a massive organization. That definitely counts as a large organization. However, Yazaki have 250,000 employees worldwide, and you're probably less familiar with Yazaki. So it just shows you can have a big brand, but then probably not as big as an employer as other companies would be. Yazaki would definitely count as a big employer compared to Jaguar Land Rover. They're both still large companies, but Jaguar Land Rover by far and away have a much bigger brand, a much better and well-known brand. So it just goes to show you, you're more likely to get an opportunity at Yazaki just due to the amount of opportunities that would be there compared to Jaguar Land Rover. And how these relate in terms of actually, if you think about work that you want to do, is that Yazaki is in the supply chain for Jaguar Land Rover. So it's not that they don't relate at all. It just shows you that you can work for a less known company that still actually does projects and work that you're interested in, and it supplies bigger brands, bigger well-known companies like Jaguar Land Rover. You're still doing interesting work. You're still working with big brands, but you're not maybe working for a big brand, but you're still working for a large company. So just bear that in mind when you're applying for jobs. And if you've got certain companies that you want to apply for, maybe you definitely want to work at Jaguar Land Rover, or you definitely want to work at BMW or Rolls-Royce or somewhere like that, Rolls-Royce Motors, of course, that would be. Think about who's in the supply chain for these companies. Lesser known, but there might be more opportunity for you to get a role there. So definitely bear that in mind. Look at the supply chain for the companies that you're interested in. And this relates to this point here. So SME basically means small to medium enterprises. And what that means is that they typically have a maximum of 250 employees. If you compare that to Jaguar Land Rover, which has 50,000, and then you have Yazaki, has 250,000, they definitely qualify as large employers, whereas an SME is definitely a small to medium organization. To bring that point home, Grad Consult, who I work for, have 12 employees, and I'm one of those. However, we have worked with 70% of the UK universities in this country, so in the UK. So that just goes to show you how much a small company can do and how projects can be interesting and can be directly supporting larger brands and larger organizations and larger institutions, but you don't necessarily have to directly work at that company, at that brand, at that institution. You can still do meaningful work at a smaller organization. And it just goes to show, definitely consider an SME. You still be doing the exciting work that you want to do. It's a much smaller company, less well known. The opportunities are there, but you have to look for them as well. So definitely bear in mind SMEs when you're looking to apply for your roles. In terms of the benefits and how that compares to a corporate grad scheme or a much larger company, is that firstly, because there's less people, but there still is a large amount of work to do, you'll be given more responsibility. So whereas if you maybe worked for a large company, you might just be a small cog in a large machine. So you're just doing a niche part, a small part of the work that needs to be done there. And it might not be as much responsibility. When you work for a smaller team, everybody's expected to pitch in. Everybody's expected to contribute. And you can work closely with your teammates and someone that's actually working on something that isn't directly related to you at all, but it's something that you could learn about just by working in a smaller team. So you definitely get more responsibility. And if that's something that you want to do, if that's something you want to gain in terms of building your experience, building your skills, then of course, definitely consider an SME. The final tip that we want to talk about is building a network. And this is just the importance of understanding who you know and how they can benefit you. But not only it being a one-way relationship, but also how you can bring value to them as well. And that is the power of networking. Knowing who can add value to you and knowing who you can bring value to as well. So a point to emphasize about a network is to say that there are 80% of the graduate vacancies, they're all open to degrees from any discipline. So 80% of jobs are open to any degree discipline. Out of those 80%, only one third are never advertised. So 2/3 are, and 1/3 are never advertised. You're never going to see them on job websites. The way to find out about them is by looking into your network. Now you might be thinking, well, I'm a graduate, I don't have a large network. Of course I don't. And here is the point to emphasize. It is crucial to build your network. And the easiest way to do that is through LinkedIn. Now, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile set up, of course, I definitely recommend that you get one set up. It's the easiest way to build a network in today's times. So what you really need to be doing is, if you're someone who maybe doesn't want to reach out to lots of people and send out connection requests and try and build rapport, try and build relationships with people, then that's fine. Of course, that would be ideal. If you don't want to do that, you can simply engage with the platform. You can like other people's posts. You can follow companies you're interested in, follow people you're interested in, connect with those who are in the sector that you're interested in, like and comment and engage with those posts so that you're a part of it. You're constantly building relationships passively and indirectly rather than sending out connection requests with tailored messages. Whilst that would be ideal, it shows you that other ways you can do it as well. Not only that, if you want to be a little bit braver, you can even post your own content on there to give people an idea of what you're all about, what you represent and what's important to you. And anybody who finds that interested would be attracted to you and may want to send that connection request to you. So you can do it that way as well. It is important to give yourself a chance at actually building a network and then reaping the benefits from that. The final point I want to talk about is, if we go back to the beginning, remember the statistic about employers saying that commercial awareness is something that graduates commonly lack. Now, it's important to say they're not expecting you to be experts on the business, but it just shows you how easy it is to build commercial awareness and to demonstrate it. So we hope that this session is the start of you gaining some commercial awareness and us being able to break down that perception that graduates don't show commercial awareness in the recruitment process and beyond. Let's show those employers that graduates do have commercial awareness. That's all for this session. Thank you so much for listening. It's all been all about commercial awareness. Hopefully you've gained something from this session, and I'll see you next time.